What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be doing our 2-round mock draft for 2025. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. You guys know how to do YouTube. Below my face is my board. It's continuously changing as I evaluate prospects and update former evaluations, so it's kind of a fun game for you guys to be able to see all that. I have a defensive interior video that actually is being recorded today as well, so we're going to be ranking the top 15. And then because of all the dudes who are deciding to go back to school, we're going to be doing a top 30 plus, maybe it might be 35, might be up to 40 defensive interiors come the offseason. But for right now, I have a pretty solid grasp on the top 15 coming out. So I'm pretty happy about that. And at least I'll be able to get into you guys. It's probably bigger than the list that people will put out there anyway. But you guys know me, I go a little overboard. Already did a top 42 corner video. But actually, we have some more corners that we might review. So we might actually have to revisit that. So super excited for that as well. But let's get into this. If you go on and follow me over on Twitter, or be able to use the sponsor of the show, UnderDog Fantasy, where you get up to $1,000 in free dollars when you use my code HAILMARY. You can just go to that link tree. It's in the description. Your 2 clicks going anywhere. And on Twitter, I use all 22 clips. So I actually post them to be able to back up my decisions on my board that you'll disagree with, because that's understandable. At number 1, though, for the Las Vegas Raiders. By the way, I'm going to start calling this Tuesday, like 2-round mock draft, so 2-round Tuesday. I just was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. So 2-round Tuesday is always going to be a thing. It's been a thing, but it's going to continue being a thing into the offseason. For the Raiders, again, there's no trades in these ones because I do a 3-round mock draft with trades. So again, keep that in mind. But for the Raiders at number 1 overall, I will say postseason, I'll be a little bit more deviant and skip on quarterback at 1. But for the time being, I just don't think they're going to. I don't fully agree with it. It's an okay quarterback class. Like, that's the thing. The definition is okay, which is not a great thing when you're picking at number 1, because I don't see a number 1 overall kind of quarterback. I thought the majority of quarterbacks that we've seen from previous drafts are far superior. And so I'm just personally like my number 1 quarterback. And again, there's some dudes in here with the stars who I have dropping, but these are my actual all 22 grades. It's not shifted by like who I think should be higher than the other. It's literally just based on the grades themselves, preseason or not. Guys with a star are guys who I think are going to drop. So right now, 39, but it'll end up probably being like 35 is where my first quarterback is on my board. And that is technically adjusted for quarterback value. But Shedeur Sanders is going to be the selection. I mean, he literally was at some type of dinner with Antonio Pierce. Kind of makes sense. Seems to be like the high floor guy, and it kind of, I mean, you can't really go wrong with going a high floor guy unless the floor is not high enough to be able to play in the NFL, which some of these high floor guys like Gardner Minshew kind of have been like, that guy who not necessarily belongs as a starter, but can somewhat compete for it. I will say, I do think the majority of these quarterbacks are not necessarily guaranteed starters, but I do think in the right situation, they could be an impact. For the Giants, I'm still going to go Cam Ward. I know there's a big push for Drew Allar coming up into this range, and you guys know how much I love Drew Allar. I've taken a ton of shit for having Drew Allar in my first rounds, and I'm just glad that, he's finally starting to get the love that he gets. I tell you guys all the time, I owe you honesty, not comfortability, and I try to blend my opinion with realism to give you guys something that's not totally skewed, so you get a general understanding of what the draft should be. But maybe if I were controlling a couple picks here, like I have a couple guys going higher, a couple guys going lower than usual, but I try to do something that is all encompassing. But my first 2 quarterbacks go at 1 and 2 respectively. At number 3 for the New England Patriots, I think Travis Hunter has to be the selection, even though I don't think he's the best corner in the class. I don't think he's the best receiver in the class. I do think that he is a high-level corner that actually complements Christian Gonzalez very well. And I think that based on his current skill set, he'd end up taking 10 to 15 reps at wide receiver. And so I think that, does that necessarily justify him going at number 3 overall? I don't know. He's obviously a Heisman finalist, could be a Heisman type of guy, but I think Ashton Genty deserves it. Feel free to debate in the comments section below. But I just think Travis Hunter is going to be one of those players that is viewed as almost invaluable. You can't really miss on Travis Hunter, so we're going to go with him at number 3. At number 4 for the Carolina Panthers, a lot of really good options here. I think Abdul Carter is fantastic. He gets a little bit too much shit for his run defense, in my opinion, but I mean, I think that the majority of the consensus opinion is skewed positively towards him. Just those who skew it negatively say that he's not a great run defender, which honestly, I don't think he's remotely as bad of a run defender as they say. It's literally his first year as an edge rusher. you're not necessarily going to be like, he is unbelievably more along his progression track than what people could have expected, like myself. But regardless, I think that what you can get in round 2, I don't like playing Moneyball very often, but this is a very good edge class. And the defensive interior talents that I really did like in round number 2, primarily Caleb Banks has decided to return to school. That's why I'm a little bit nervous about that, being able to wait till the second round to get someone across from Derek Brown, who has enough talent. And so I'm actually going to go Mason Graham here at number 4. Leaving the Jaguars at number 5, a plethora of great options here. You could even go Abdul Carter if you want, but I'm going to put some respect on Will Johnson's name. He's the best player in the class. People talk about him as Patrick Surtain II. And Patrick Surtain would have been like probably number 2 overall in that class. If you think about it, like maybe a little bit lower than that, but he would have been a top 5 pick, no doubt, in a redraft, like where we actually have hindsight. So regardless of that, if you can get that again, I think it makes sense here at pick number 5. The Jaguars have been searching for their top tier corner for a hot minute, and so it's nice to see them be able to get it with Will Johnson, who's only been struggling a little bit with his overall athleticism because of some injuries that have happened this year. At number 6 for the Tennessee Titans, you have a lot of good options here as well. You can go Abdul Carter. You can go Tetero McMillan. Like, you could really go a multitude of routes. And so I will go T-Mac just because I do think that's going to be the more likely solution, or the more likely selection, I should say. And, end up taking a really, really, really talented wide receiver that doesn't have a ton of questions in the specific role that he'd play for Tennessee, which is going to be T. Higgins / DeAndre Hopkins role. So T. Higgins, obviously, for Brian Callahan over at Cincinnati, and then DeAndre Hopkins' role as of this year. And number 7 for the New York Jets, I could throw a little bit of a curveball in here because based on the players that are available, I will say I feel like this is where a big Jets trade out would be. T-Mac could have been an interesting solution since Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers could potentially be gone. Will Johnson's kind of like the dream pick because DJ Reed is going to be gone. You're not going to go Ashton Genty. You're not probably going to go Abdul Carter. There's no defensive interior unless you want to go Omar Norman Lott, which is absolutely batshit crazy since the dude I don't think started a single game this year. You're not going to take him at 7. So there's honestly a particular pick that I think you should trade back for. And yes, I'm going to get a ton of shit for this, but I'm going to allow the hype of this past week, allow Drew Allar. You guys know how much I have a tough time saying Drew Allar's name, which I shouldn't, but you know what? It is what it is. Here's the one little curveball. First off, he's seen on Instagram saying JETS, Jets on Olu Fashanu's Instagram post. But on top of that, Drew Allar, I almost said it again. Yeah, it's actually Drew Allar. But Drew Allar, his left tackle is literally there. Like someone who he has a bond with. His blind side was protected by Olu Fashanu. Would it not make sense to be able to go after a big arm quarterback who's used to those elements, who has progressed noticeably every single year, who can be able to take advantage of being able to, he doesn't have a good receiving core, so you just get him a good tight end, and then I think that a lot of things work themselves out. Again, in a trades mock draft, I'd trade my ass down from here. Just full transparency, there's too many good players, I'd trade my ass down. And maybe a noticeable amount, maybe to like pick number 20 even, like through multiple trade downs. So keep that in mind, but without trades, I'm going to actually go after Drew Allar here to pair him back up with his left tackle in Olu Fashanu. The Jets are not a team that needs to be able to force an issue. That's kind of what happened when you got Aaron Rodgers. Just be able to develop and have patience. Like Zach Wilson was supposed to be a messiah, and there was some shit that happened there. Obviously, the dude never faced pressure at BYU. You could talk about a multitude of factors, but Drew Allar has faced plenty of pressure. He hasn't really had, outside of Tyler Warren, anybody to throw to on a consistent basis. There's some dudes who are starting to step up there at Penn State. But even his running back duo, I don't necessarily think has the necessary juice that people want to give it credit for. So Drew Allar really does elevate that team, and they're a really, really good squad, but I think that they're overperforming right now. It is what it is, but I do think that he could be a massive asset there for New York. At number 8 for the Cleveland Browns, I'm stuck between two players right here at the top, Ashton Genty as well as Abdul Carter. Ashton Genty, if he wasn't pulled out, I think of 8 different quarters, like he didn't play 8 quarters fully the entire year, and people were trying to talk about, oh, wow, well, we have seen this before with Barry Sanders and all that. If he played those 8 quarters, he would have destroyed the record. I think it was like 190 yards off. If he had essentially 2 games worth of extra play, he would have broken that record. The only reason why he wouldn't go in the top 10 is solely, and I mean solely, because medicals. Like, if you look and his knee is not necessarily going to last even a full rookie contract, it's not worth it. But when you look at Cleveland's situation, I know that you'll continue restructuring and being able to make room, and maybe that brings Jameis back. But the easiest way to assist some offensive line woes in terms of pass protection, and then also some woes in terms of quarterback inconsistency, is being able to have a good run game. Nick Chubb's up for a contract, and this team's identity has been through the run. I think Abdul Carter would be an amazing choice. Like, full transparency there. I think that would be a really, really solid selection. But I think that we would be negligent of Ashton Genty's talent, and maybe he's not the best receiver on planet Earth, but he's not ass as a receiver either. Like, it's not like he has a billion drops. Like, this guy does have receiving production on the year, and so I will continue to go Ashton Genty because I am failing to believe that the NFL will not see Ashton Genty, who is one of the most talented backs that we've seen come out of college, and view him as a lower tier than Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. And, I mean, I think maybe you could look at him as a tier below Saquon Barkley, but Saquon Barkley went at 2 overall, while the others went at 6 and 8, respectively. Again, you could, like, Jahmyr ended up going actually at 12, but the Lions literally were like, we might take him here at 6. So they're comfortable with that. Ashton Genty should be perfectly comfortable there at pick number 8. At pick number 9 for the Chicago Bears, offensive line makes a ton of sense here, but not as much as Abdul Carter. And edge 2 certainly makes a lot of sense. We're going to be doing a free agency video this week as well, where we go over all the big name free agents on every single team. And Darrell Taylor is going to be a guy who I talk about. In the offseason, I'll end up mentioning whether I'd actually re-sign him or not, because we'll have a lot more clarity as in terms of salary cap restructures, and then, you know, just a better lay of the land. And for then, that's when we'll be able to determine it. But for the time being, I'm saying, hey, if you get Abdul Carter here at 9, I don't give a shit if you have Darrell Taylor on your roster or not. Abdul Carter would be a great addition. At number 10 for the Saints, an absolute ball kicker right there, because Abdul Carter is the dream pick for the Saints and one that I've moved up for before as well. But looking at the options that have fallen into our lap, I think that the best move would be to go after probably a quality defensive lineman here, Nick Scorton. I mean, he is perfectly sized, right? I mean, like 6'4", 285. Yeah, technically he had a down year, but he also went to a system that was relatively dysfunctional and then ended up becoming far more successful as the year went on, right? I mean, you get rid of your coach, and then all of a sudden your team starts performing better and better and better, and the players start performing better and better and better. And that's something that I necessarily like to see is more of a system issue than a player talent issue, because we've seen it with Nick Scorton. He was going to be, I think he was my number 4 player coming into the year. So with all that being said, I mean, he's ended up bouncing back, someone who will be reevaluated again for my Edge video, and will be a great selection here at pick 10. At number 11 for the Cincinnati Bengals, a lot of really good choices here as well. I mean, that's just the draft for you. There's just a lot of versatile talent here, and granted, we ended up throwing a massive curveball here with Drew Allar at pick number 7, but again, big quarterback, big arm, super young, getting better every year, elevating the roster, having big-time throws. Kind of makes sense. But regardless, for the Bengals here at pick number 11, I'm going to look at Malachi Starks. This dude's been cooked a multitude of times, back-to-back weeks. I don't know what the hell is going on with him. I'm just going to be totally real. Like, he allowed like 180 yards, or it might have been 168 yards this past week. Like, legitimately got cooked in the slot. But you don't put him in the slot at that point. And that's the beautiful thing about Malachi. He can play in the slot if he wants to, but if you have someone in the slot who's going to be a Calvin Austin type, which you will face, put him at safety. And honestly, that's a bigger issue than the slot. Like, why do you even need to put him there? You're not going to have that be the primary issue here. So, for me, I feel perfectly fine with him being a deep safety and essentially adding another dominant defensive back to your core that you haven't had since Jesse Bates left. So, hopefully you guys value defensive back enough to do this. Will Campbell wouldn't be a bad choice here. Calvin Banks either. But I'm going to go Malachi Starks. You could technically go Josh Simmons as well to be able to pair him up with DeJuan Jones to get 2 Ohio State guys, but we'll talk about that another time. At number 12 for the Dallas Cowboys, again, kind of the board doesn't fall the way that you're hoping for it to. Dark horse pick here, the more I looked at your free agents, would be actually Nick Scorton, because D-Law up for a contract, not necessarily guaranteed to come back. And even though my boy Marshawn Nealon's there, I would still say Nick Scorton could be a really good addition. Defensive interior-wise, I just don't see anybody that's worth it here except for Omar Norman-Lott. It's funny. Every time someone loves somebody, I end up loving them more. And maybe it's just solely because I end up loving some other players less. Maybe it's just not the case that I love a particular talent more. With Omar, I know I love him more than other people just because I don't know how many people have him in their top 20, but that's with knocking his ass down a little bit. Freak athlete, by the way. I think if the Cowboys ended up moving back, that wouldn't be a bad move. But honestly, a dark horse pick here would be Jalen Walker. And I'll explain myself, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. And DeMarvion Overshown again gets hurt. I'm not saying that Jalen would be a full-time linebacker, but you'd almost use him like the way that you'd kind of want to use Micah Parsons. But Jalen Walker would be essentially an edge rusher, linebacker hybrid. I'm not going to do it this time, but I want to throw that out there. It's the toughest position. It's the toughest team to draft for as well. Wide receiver would be awesome if T-Mac were available. It's not. But with Zach Martin also coming off a season-ending injury, I think he's going to end up retiring. Like, hand on heart, I think he's going to retire. And so I want to go after a player that I think has the capability to potentially play tackle for us, but also play guard for us in the short run. And that's actually going to be Josh Simmons here. I actually have him, I have my own little short description as to why I believe a player is where they're at on my board that you guys don't get to see. It's slightly off to the side. But I ended up saying this about him. He has great mechanics. He's athletic. Is he he's a blue chip tackle, but is he a Hall of Fame level guard? Just going to put that out there. I think that he is one of the few offensive linemen that I think would be worth it. If you can't trade back, this is the big asterisk. This is a 2-rounder with no trades, right? That's why I'm having to force some picks here that I don't necessarily feel comfortable with. But for Josh Simmons, he's going to be the instant replacement for Zach Martin. Also, I think Tyler Guyton should end up being a right tackle where he was most comfortable. I had a big issue with you guys taking him because I'm like, hey, this is a really good talent, but he's so raw at right tackle and you're sticking him to the most valuable position on the offensive line at left. I'd prefer for him to go back, prefer for Steele to honestly maybe hit the road if he needs to, but have Josh Simmons be the left tackle for the long run, maybe after an extra year of development and getting healthy for Josh. Regardless, I think that your identity needs to continue being offensive line, and Josh Simmons is going to help you out with that. At 13 for the Miami Dolphins, I don't think they value offensive line enough. I know the Dallas Cowboys actually value offensive line to that degree, but looking at the options available, edge rusher technically is on the table for them. Defensive back technically on the table for them. It's an interesting spot to be in, and I just wish offensive line was going to be a little bit more feasible. Defensive interior makes the most sense though, and looking at the players available, I do think Tyler Williams is going to have a little bit of a resurgence, and Omar Norman Lott might get selected pretty high. And looking at what the Dolphins did last year, Chop wasn't, if I'm trying to remember correctly, and Chop also dealt with some injuries, but Chop wasn't necessarily the every down starter for every single down type of guy that you're looking for. I could see a total curveball here with Omar Norman Lott totally boosting up boards at the Senior Bowl and then testing out the way he will because he's a freak athlete. And I'm going to throw a curveball. Defense interior, I think, is what we believe on. That we believe the Dolphins would take in this situation if they have to stick and pick. And a lot of people would say, "Hey, go Kenneth Grant." But I'm actually going to go Omar Norman Lott here, even though he has so limited reps. I think that the talent is through the roof, and you can see exactly where I think he should be at 17 overall on my board. I'm pretty happy with that. Numbers 14 for the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of good choices here to where you could just kind of pick and choose. Jalen Walker is a dark horse pick. I saw that the other day. I was like, But tight end, you guys have still not really hit on it. And I always say, hey, I don't really value tight end too much in this offense because the quantity of mouths to feed. There's a certain point where I'm like, okay, at this point, you need to go after it. And, based on the blocking profile of Tyler Warren, it doesn't necessarily fit the tight end style that the Colts have drafted in the past, because you think about Jelani Woods, kind of more of a receiving tight end, Kylan Granson, pony up, SMU, you also kind of a receiving style. So I think Colston Loveland fits a little bit more. I want to draft Tyler Warren to him, but I will respect the tradition. And Colston Loveland's not a bad blocker by any means, but he is kind of the more superior route running type of tight end that I think this offense will value. At number 15 for the Atlanta Falcons, I'm going Jalen Walker here. And that's solely because, first off, edge rusher is super key. But if you have to kick him to a linebacker, I'm just going to be so for real right now. He's actually a linebacker that might be worth the 15th overall pick. a really, really unique talent that I think doesn't get enough love. And technically, I could also talk about, I don't know where Jihad Campbell is in this, but Jihad Campbell, haven't officially graded him, but that dude's an absolute baller too. At number 16 for the Arizona Cardinals, it's another spot where do I go defense interior at this point and then kind of look for an edge rusher another time? And I think the answer might be yes here. And I know that technically you could look at offensive line because you can get Will Campbell, get a real quality offensive lineman, and kind of screw over the Niners, who technically might need to look at that left guard spot. But I also think that the Niners have so many options, you're not really going to weaken them, and you got to do what's best for yourself. And I do think there's a clear top 3 defensive interiors in this class, and I already took 2 of my top 3. I'm thinking about going for the third here. Tyleik Williams gets no respect. I'm just going to be honest. I mean, people who watch Ohio State know how good Tyleik Williams is, so I won't say no respect, but I don't think we give him enough respect where he could be considered here at 16. Like, currently, where's he at on my board? Where the hell? Did I not update Tyleik's grade on this? Son of a biscuit. Okay, well, I need to do that. Actually, no, he's right here at number 31. So he's at number 31 overall, technically tied 31. That's worth it to me. I mean, there's a big drop-off after him because, spoiler alert again, I shouldn't be spoiling my list that's coming up, but TJ Sanders is right after that. There's a big drop-off. So I'm going to go after the best player available at a position of need, and that's going to be Tyleik Williams. And number 17 for the San Francisco 49ers, offensive tackle is going to be the thing for me. Arianti Ursary, because I also know that's what I would want for the Rams, is kind of like that sexy hybrid of something that helps you guys out. McKivitz, obviously not a long-term option there. And then if you need to, you can kick him to guard for the short run if there are any struggles. I personally think it is a perfectly fine solution for any problem that you have in the offensive line, and it's also great for San Francisco. And number 18 for the Los Angeles Rams, we're going to go Kelvin Banks. Let's not overcomplicate it. Will Campbell would be great, but I just think that we need someone who I have more trust in as a pure tackle at this point. And 19 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. By the way, I do have Will Campbell above Ursary, above Banks. Like, just PSA. I just also think those other two play a more valuable position for a team that kind of wants to fill said position that's more valuable. At number 19, though, for the Buccaneers, edge rusher. Already took Jalen Walker before. Going to go James Pierce here. If Falcons fans, if you don't like Jalen Walker there, you could swap with James Pierce. Who gives a shit? Both of them are fantastic players, right? Like, I love them both. You're going to be pretty much set there. If either of those guys are available for the Buccaneers at 19, I am taking them. At 20 for the Washington Commanders, Will Campbell's here. Very hard to say no because I love him to death. Again, with a trade up, he would have been gone by now. Just, again, spoiler alert. But with the Commanders losing Benjamin St-Juste, I could totally see. By the way, we're going to have Ben Morrison returning in this. Should have said that earlier. Say that every video, but, it slips my mind. I think that corner is going to be super key for them. And I do see a run on corners coming up very soon. So I think that we might want to take the corners that we have a lot of faith in now. And looking at the corners, I think they like some physicality there. I think Trey Amos might be that type of player that really, really, really shakes it up in the offseason because he's big, he's physical. Even though he's like, 6'1", 190, the dude plays like he's 210. And not like speed-wise, I'm talking about just physicality. I think this guy deserves to be taken above a lot of the other names in the class. So Trey Amos, going to be the selection. He is someone that a lot of people love in the NFL, and so we're going to have him go here. At 21 for the Chargers, very tempting to just go Will Campbell and say, screw it. I'm still going to go after someone who is at a position of need with a perfect system fit. Obviously, he played under this defensive coordinator, so we're going to go after Kenneth Grant. Could have went after tight end. I just don't know if he's going to want to do that over Kenneth Grant. And also, it fits my agenda to send Tyler Warren to Sean Payton. So it all works out in the end, doesn't it? Regardless, I still think both these teams will see respective values at different ranges here. The Broncos are desperate for a tight end. You could also talk about the Chargers doing that. But when you can have a perfect system fit with a freak athlete that you already have seen the development and had a development path for, I think that you're going to be able to implement him much easier than even Tyler Warren, who's a great player. Somehow, some way, the Seahawks get Will Campbell to play guard. If he might have to play tackle, though, if Abe Lucas continues to play hurt. But you're getting yourself an unreal talent there at 23. For the Baltimore Ravens at 24, a lot of positions to address, like a lot of them. I do think edge rusher, defensive interior are positions not listed that you should be looking at. Offensive line as well. And looking at the guys who are available, I mean, I still think Cam Williams will probably return, but it is very possible that you do end up, hey, Ozzy Trapilo, shout out to him. I think that you guys are in an interesting position here where there's not really a valuable left tackle that's a consistent left tackle. That will be an NFL left tackle. Talking about Wyatt Milam, probably a guard here. So I want to address some other positions, and I'm going to look at the edge rushing group. Now, you have a lot of really, really good players here. I have JT Tuimoloau above the majority of them, but ceiling does matter. And Mikael Williams is one of those guys who has one of those freaky ceilings, so I'll take him to go here. At 25 for the Houston Texans, dark horse need is wide receiver. With Luther Burden on the board, it might be the best player available. And when you think about it, top wide receivers, Stephon Diggs was on a one-year contract, now going to be out in free agency. You might be able to bring him back, who knows? But at the same time, you have Nico Collins, great receiver, also not really reliably healthy. You have Tank Dell, small receiver, not necessarily reliably healthy. Behind that, you really are starting to have to play money ball. So Luther Burden could bring an aspect to this offense that you don't necessarily have. And he slipped into your lap. Let's take him here. Defensive interior is the easy position to go, guard as well, but I also want to be able to test out some other theories rather than just going after the standard positions. At pick number 26 for the Green Bay Packers, corner just makes too much sense. I'm just being so for real. With the talent that's available, I could see it totally dropping off as well. Darian Porter's a dark horse first-round pick. This dude's just coming out as you can see the amount of coverage reps he's played. It's literally under 400 on his career. Super raw, but 6'4", 200 pounds, and Iowa State not too far from Green Bay, used to the weather. You could see him playing in a very unique environment. Again, having Ben Morrison return in this one, like Azarai Thomas, I love him to death, and I've sent him to Green Bay several times, and I think it'd be a fine move. But I do think that I want to start looking more realistically at what the Green Bay Packers are going to be, which is a team that requires physicality and consistency in very inclement weather. And Darian Porter has shown throughout this past year to be able to bring that physicality, that foot speed, and also anything else in terms of proficiency in the said climate. So we're going to go after Darian Porter here. And number 27 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, quarterback is a potential move. Not really a huge fan of the quarterbacks. I'm just going to be for real. But wide receiver, I know there's a lot of people talking about Bond, Emeka Buka. I think Isaiah Bond should go back to school. I mean, the dude just he's not healthy. And he's going to fall because of that too. I just hate to say it. Jalen Rawls is kind of a dream pick for me for Pittsburgh. And I think if they trade back, would not be too pissed off if that is their selection. But I also think that we need a true boundary corner too, because we won't have one next year. Losing our number 2 corner, Dante Jackson, this offseason. Azarai Thomas is going to be my pick. He's kind of the exact opposite of Joey Porter Jr. in the aspect that I love Joey Porter more in the zone instincts. Azarai Thomas, even though PFF, we kind of know that we can't fully trust PFF's grades, but they're good reference points. Azarai Thomas is built to be a man corner who's physical, fluid, and I think we have enough safety valves everywhere else on the team. I'm not saying he's bad in zone, but I think we have enough safety valves to be able to balance out where maybe those proficiencies or inefficiencies would pop up. I think that we kind of lack another guy who has that flying speed, that size, and that physicality, because this is the AFC North. So I think that it's well worth selecting Azarai Thomas to the Steelers over the options that are available. And number 28, again, cannot trade back. This is a no trades mock draft. For the Vikings, if we have one shot, we're going to be going after a guard or a corner. But I do think there's so many corners that are coming up for a contract. It is kind of hard to say no to Siobhan Revell here, who, rest in peace to Kyrie Jackson, but it kind of would play the exact role that they were hoping for him to play. So I do think that's going to be the smart move. Guard is very, very valuable, but at the same time, this is a good guard/tackle class that you can end up kicking some of these quasi tackles to guard. So I think that would be the best move. Defensive interior wise, I already kind of took my top 3 dudes, and then you're kind of starting to have to pull on my arm to select Walter Nolan and Derek Harmon, Darrell Jackson at this point. So at 29 though for the Buffalo Bills, I think they're in a position of luxury to where you can go after Walter Nolan. I just think that's almost a guarantee he goes in the first round at this point, because he'll probably go to the Chiefs if not. And then, you look past that, even the Eagles, if they're going to let Milt walk, do you think they might consider Walter Nolan? It's very, very possible. So Let's go after Walter Nolan for the Bills. I don't think it's the biggest issue for them to solve, but also, I mean, I'm just going to be able to select devil's advocate, the best player available in the eyes of the consensus. Pick number 30 for the Philadelphia Eagles. Dark horse pick, you got Jalen Milroe here, but we already get pissed off at Jalen Hurts not being able to hit certain targets. Jalen Milroe's throwing doesn't really help out that equation too much. But regardless, back on track. We have two positions I really want to address. Tight end, which I don't see anybody worth it. I mean, Helm and Stowers ended up having pretty piss poor last weeks. Harold Fannin is an absolute beast, but he's 230 pounds. So I think the best move for Philly is to trade up. I honestly hope you guys lose a lot of games. Like, I hate to say that to y'all, but like, I do hope that either you lose early on in the playoffs to where you're right around here to where you can snipe a Tyler Warren, because I don't want you to spend so many draft picks to be able to do that. You need a reliable option that's healthy. But regardless, edge rusher is going to be the thing. And you could end up talking about replacing your primary edge in Josh Sweat. JT Tuimoloau is your guy. But I do think that you guys value a little bit more flexibility, some coverage ability, and Princely Umami-Ellen probably would be that. Like, I'd prefer to get Tyler Warren if you could, like, just trade up and get him. I think that that's going to be so invaluable to this roster. It's kind of ridiculous. But Jahad Campbell, dark horse pick. You guys don't select that in the first, though. So it's really up to you. Actually, LT Overton's going to be the pick. I don't think he comes out. Just spoiler alert, he's a true junior, and I think he could be like a top 5 pick in next year's class. But for the time being, we'll like relish in the fact that LT Overton is at least considered draftable and take him here for the Eagles because he's a freak athlete at 283. So he can end up replacing Josh Sweat, but he also is not too shabby in coverage. 31 for the Kansas City Chiefs. Emeka Buka's here, and when you look at the wide receiver core after this year, it's pretty much Xavier Worthy, which I got plenty of shit not even giving that a B grade, but it's not necessarily Xavier's fault that he's not being super duper productive. Mahomes has just been a little bit off this year. Don't really know what that's all fully about. You guys can end up really breaking it down for me if you guys want to. But regardless, tight end wise, you could talk about Fannin here. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I do think that it could be. It's a pretty much solidified top 3. Like, I don't know why people aren't discussing that more. But regardless, running back, not going to do that. Offensive tackle, go free agency. You guys have failed twice pretty much on experiments with Wanya Morris as well as Kingsley Suamatea. Like, just get the real deal. Don't really fuck around and find out because you're showing that you're not very good at drafting offensive tackles. Like, stick to your strengths. Draft really solid receiving talents like Emeka Ibuka. And it's not saying Xavier Worthy's bad in any means because we've seen he's good. But as a first-round pick, maybe not really worth it. Emeka Ibuka is going to be the selection, though. I mean, he brings a very comfortable frame and role that you have with Rashee Rice, who's going to be coming back. But at the same time, Emeka Ibuka is just a level of consistency that you need on this team. Like, you don't need really flash and bang. Sometimes you just need someone who is going to be consistent. At 32 for the Detroit Lions, edge rusher is the quick and easy pick here. But I also think we could end up trying to snipe that in the second. I just think also I'm going to take so many edge rushers from now to then. Jack Sawyer is the instant gut reaction pick just because he belongs on Detroit. I don't think that's going to be the guy who I do take, though. I think I would actually prefer JT Tuimoloau. I think he's a better player. And not going to say anything about Jack Sawyer that's negative because I think he's a really, really fun player to have. But I think JT Tuimoloau is the most underrated edge rusher in the class. I don't know why people don't love him the way they do, but they do what they do. At number 33, I'm going to be boring. I did this the past 2 drafts. Going to do it again. Jahad Campbell makes a ton of sense for the Raiders. You're getting yourself a captain on offense and a captain on defense. Linebackers both up for a contract. It's just like it makes too much sense. Sometimes you got to do the boring thing. For the Giants, you do need a boundary corner. I do think you also need a right tackle. And I mean, you have an offensive line coach who's designed, who's built to be able to develop these guys as well. I don't know if Stoutland would pass on Cam Williams, but I think there's enough guys in this class to where I wouldn't really go for Cam Williams if I'm Stoutland because I also trust him to develop talent. I'm going to go after Cam Williams here for the Giants. At number 35 for the New England Patriots, we ended up getting Travis Hunter in the first. We got to look at some offensive tackle talent, kind of stole it with Cam Williams there. And I mean, you can get Donovan Jackson here, but Josh Connerly is coming off one of his best games. I know a lot of people try to shit him because of all the holding and stuff. But when you're going up against Abdul Carter, who is pretty much a consensus top 5 pick, sometimes it happens. Like, Josh Connerly is a fantastic player who has some of the most lockdown reps in the class. You could try to go for the more consistent Jack Nelson, who is like a legitimate 6'7", 316 pounds. He used to be 312, but like experienced, built to be a left tackle in the NFL type of guy. Don't know why he's 191, but that's beyond me. I will go actually though after Josh Connerly here, who has a ton of hype. And I mean, you also could use help on the interior of the offensive line if Josh Connerly can't work out at left tackle, which at 35 is worth the risk. For the Chicago Bears at 36, we took Abdul Carter in the first. And I guess we can kind of see where everything ends up falling because I'm going to go Jack Nelson here. I think Jack Nelson is a real quality offensive tackle. I mean, he literally is in my top, what is he? He's in my top 50, right? I lied. He's in my top 64 somewhere. I can't even see where he's at. But regardless, he's in there somewhere. Jack Nelson's a great player, though. Great player. And he's going to be rising back up my board. I actually regraded him early in the season when he was having some early year struggles. But you're getting a true left tackle, got a true edge. Let Kron Amagaji be able to float around and, just see where everything else falls from there. At 37 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, we took our corner in Will Johnson. I do think that you still could be in the market for offensive line here. And I actually think Donovan Jackson is a guard because I know you re-signed your left tackle there in Walker Little. Donovan Jackson would be great for that. On top of that, if Walker Little has some inconsistencies, is not very good going the long run because some guys just don't perform after their first contract, or second contract, I might say, then you still have a really, really good option there in Donovan Jackson. Like, yeah, he's not been as good as a left tackle, but the poor guy literally hasn't played reps at left tackle besides that. So we're going to go Donovan Jackson here, who I think is well worth the selection. He is currently at number 16 overall on my board. And number 38 for the Tennessee Titans, we ended up going after wide receiver with T-Mac in the first. Kind of makes sense. At this point, like Princely Umami-Ellen's calling my name. I just think that's going to be the right move for the team. You could try to like big brain it, go after a quarterback here, but I honestly don't really see that as being very positive towards moving this team towards something productive. Getting someone like Princely Umami-Ellen who's very productive might be able to add a little bit extra juice to that defense that already is performing very well. I'm having Isaiah Bond slip for health reasons, FYI. But regardless, we're back with the New York Jets, who ended up taking Drew Allar in the first round. Already know I'm getting a ton of shit for that, but it is what it is. I think corner also on the radar for them. The guy who I actually have is not listed here, which kind of pisses me off because there's a lot of guys who are graded here. I don't know how you don't end up grading Jermari Harris or DJ McKinney. I'm going to go Jermari Harris here, though, out of Iowa. I think he needs to have, we're going to use a placeholder, by the way, of Central Cyprus. But my number 32 player in Jermari Harris, again, going to be higher when these guys who need to be regraded ends up going. But a really good athlete. High-end reps are ridiculous. Needs a little bit of mentorship, which I think Sauce would be given to him. At number 40 for the Cleveland Browns, took a running back in the first. And Ashton Genty, we have Jalen Milroe here in the second. He needs multiple years to develop, but also you guys could also be a primary run team where you could end up using Genty and Milroe. That would be kind of a ridiculous combo, but sometimes you just got to get a little ridiculous. At number 41 for the Chicago Bears, already went after left tackle with Jack Nelson, as well as edge rusher with Abdul Carter, which is a little bit of a crazy combo if you ask me. Looking at other choices here, we could still go after Wyatt Milan to play interior offensive line. Same thing with Jonas Avenia. Like, both those guys, really, really good talents. Armand Membu, dark horse pick as well if you want to just fully invest in offensive and defensive lines. Defensive interior-wise, I think TJ Sanders is a beast. He is pretty clearly my next best defensive interior player. And it might be worth it at this point. But he is kind of more that pass rushing type of guy. I mean, to be fair, he's been consistent against the run, but he's 290, right? Like, I don't know if he necessarily is going to be as productive as what I think he could be. By the way, Dante Corleone, he's not coming out in this mock draft. Or not in this mock draft, but actually in the draft. He ended up actually declaring he's going back to Cincy. So we're going to go TJ Sanders here, though. I'm going to roll the dice because sometimes, say it with me, size doesn't matter. TJ Sanders really does play the run very well. And, where is he at on my board? I think he's in the 72 range. So Oh, man, I got DeMonte Capehart here too. Spoiler alert. Most of you guys aren't watching. He's 64 on my board. So I really like him. And actually here at 42, I'm very tempted to just go double up on the defensive line. And this time, I'm going to use a placeholder. Oh, I don't have to. Let's freaking go. DeMonte Capehart is an unreal talent that does not get any respect at all. Also, Clemson, get paired up with Brian Breezy. He has the best bull rush in the whole country. I'll just leave it there. This dude just straight up powers offensive linemen into the QB. Even in the run game, he does that too. This guy's an absolute savage, which I hate the fact that I'm kind of already showing all my analysis I'm going to be doing on my defense interior video, but it is what it is. You guys get a nice little sneak peek. At 43 for the Bengals, we ended up going after a defensive back in the first round. Here, we're going to be looking at potentially defensive interior with Derek Harmon, but I also do think we should get another edge rusher because that's a little bit more valuable. And Shedeur Sanders ended up declaring for the draft. He's a true junior, which means he got a very good grade, which means he'll be coming out. And he's going to be drafted around this range. We're going to go Shedeur Sanders here, 290 pounds, big enough size to be your edge rusher because you guys like that 270 plus range. And Shedeur Sanders is a freak athlete, so I think it'll be a good move. For the Dallas Cowboys at 44, at this point, I'm going to say Isaiah Bond returns. Out of respect to him, Ben Morrison, Isaiah Bond returning. I'm going to put it in the description this time. Out of respect, you got to do that. Marion Hampton slipping here. I do think we could end up going after that route. But I actually think Caleb Johnson's going to be even more valuable. True junior. Look at the amount of carries this guy's had. Under, I think, 500 on his career. I think just over 500. What is that? 250 plus another 250. Yeah. So what? 508 carries on his whole career. This dude's an absolute beast. So we're going to go after him here. So far, we ended up getting offensive line as well as running back, kind of revamping the offense, which kind of has been the impingement, so to speak. At number 45 for the Dolphins, again, we're going to have Ben Morrison and Isaiah Bond return just out of respect. Out of respect for the poor guys. Isaiah Bond, the dude's a true junior. He'll be with Arch Manning. I think it's going to be okay. But regardless, I think Wyatt Milam would be the best choice here. Jonah could be a better choice, air quotes, but Wyatt Milam's been super consistent before having, I believe, a wrist injury that has kind of given him the 8 hurries that he's allowed over the past few weeks. But before injury, this dude is an absolute beast. At number 46, we have the Indianapolis Colts. Again, these two guys returning, but win a tight end in the first. Going to do the same boring shit that I normally do. Hate to break it to you, but when you have a great player like Nick Eamon-Warry who slips, you take him. At number 47 for the Atlanta Falcons, took an edge rusher / linebacker in the first. With Jalen Walker. Here in the second, I'm actually going to go after a pure nose tackle, and that's Deone Walker. Fantastic potential to have him as your nose. He ended up declaring as a true junior, which I think wasn't a very good move for him, personally. Don't think he should have come out. I thought he needed a lot more polish. But when you can snipe him here in the second, I don't think anybody's complaining. At 48 for the Cardinals, they took a defensive interior round 1. And so they're doing the exact opposite of what the Falcons do, and they're going after edge rusher here in the second. A ton of really good choices. I love Camion Rucker, but you really can't go wrong. Who gives a crap who you select? A lot of these guys are very similarly graded. Kyle Kennard had a little bit of a rough end to the season, but he's also been dealing with some injuries. He's going to be able to bounce back in the offseason, and we're going to see what he's truly made of, but I'm going to go after Kyle Kennard there. At number 49 for the San Francisco 49ers, went after offensive line there in the first. We need to go after defensive line here. And with the quantity of edge rushers available, you could go after Derek Harmon here and get a punchy defensive interior, though. Should probably do that. Derek Harmon is a very good defensive interior. He gets a lot of respect, but I don't know if he actually comes out. I didn't know he's a true junior. But regardless, Derek Harmon's going to be the choice. They need help on the defensive line. Filling out through both lines is super key, so we're going to do it. At 50 for the Carolina Panthers, we went after defense interior round 1. And honestly, Cardinals fans, if you want to go after another edge rusher, feel free to swap it here with the Carolina Panthers because Kyle Kennard makes a lot of sense for him. Mike Green is a fantastic edge rusher. He's been doing a great job. Tyler Barron's a beast. Different frames entirely, but I'm going to go actually after Mike Green, who's having a pretty damn good year. Look at that. Ridiculous stats. Regardless, at 51 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, went after their edge in the first round. Here in the second, I like looking potentially at wide receiver with Eli Manor here, Jalen Royals. You really can't go wrong. Jaden Higgins as well. I'm going to go after Io Manor here. I hope that he does come out. If he doesn't, I hope he transfers because Stanford. But Io Maynard's going to be the choice. At 52 for the Commanders, we went after corner in the first. We're going to go after edge here in the second. A lot of great talent. But I think Jack Sawyer is going to be like, Dominic Zerowaku might be the better choice for this team. Yeah, we're going to do a little bit of a change of course there and go Donovan Zerowaku. It doesn't really matter. You're going to get great talents nonetheless, but still. At 53 for the Los Angeles Chargers, the one defensive line, I'm going to go Harold Fannin Jr. here for them in the second. Versatile tight end, just makes a ton of sense. Pick number 54 for the Denver Broncos. At this point, wide receiver. I'm having Isaiah Bond return in this, just FYI. Jalen Royals right down the road from Colorado to Utah. After the catchability off the charts, I mean, he ended up declaring for the draft today. One of the most disrespected wide receivers I've ever seen. Not really, because people have him relatively properly graded. The one who I think is really disrespected, he's probably not even on here. He's not. I mean, LeJontay Wester, shout out to him. I haven't officially graded him yet, but that dude's getting a lot of love from my homies. But regardless, Jalen Royals, such a great player. Ended off his year with a season-ending ankle injury. He's going to be there for the Senior Bowl, so we're going to be able to see him in person. This dude is 4.3 speed and unbelievable after the catch. He also, before this year, had like a 70, like up to 70% contested catch rate. And he ended up starting out this year at like 18%. So he ended up really improving as he and Petrus got on the same page. So excellent player. I don't think that, I mean, I just fucked over myself because I want him for the Steelers, but you know, that's how much I love y'all. Pick number 55 for the Seattle Seahawks. Offensive line, round 1. Technically could do the same here, round 2. But looking at other positions to draft, I know a lot of you guys have been talking about a receiver to potentially replace Tyler Lockett. And I want to be able to experiment with that theory. And I know you guys probably could use some help on special teams as well. Not saying that your special teams is ass. I'm just going to put this out there. I'm not great at evaluating special teams. Like, I'll just say it. That's just not something I'm very skilled at the moment. Hopefully that'll change. But Ricky White is 4 punt blocks on the year. And I called mini Marvin Harrison at the start of the year. So where's he at on my board? Where's mini Marv? Donde está? 52. So 52 overall. I think that's worth it. Ricky White going to be the selection. Pick number 56 for the Baltimore Ravens. Another team that technically could go after wide receiver. I mean, putting that out there. But we ended up going after Mikael Williams in the first round. So with that being selected, let's look at the offensive lineman here. And a lot of good choices. Honestly, you can't really go wrong. Like, I honestly am going to go Armand Membu here. He's done a fantastic job. You'll have to kick him over to left tackle, which is going to be weird. But worst case scenario, you have yourself a super high quality guard. Like, I guess Jonah's played true left tackle now for part of the year if you want to test him out there. And then you could also kick him into your offensive line if need be. Yeah, let's do that. That makes a lot more sense. He's super athletic. I mean, let's just not fuck around. Like, he's someone who actually did play that position, so I think it makes sense. At 57 for the Houston Texans, we do have some running backs that are slipping here, and that's okay. But defense, interior, and guard, the key positions. And we still have some great players here. Tyler Booker's just had a struggle year. Like, he just hasn't been necessarily super consistent. But, I mean, I say struggle is a massive air quotes. I think he ends up returning, but he's still a top 20 player on my board. I went Jonas Avendia because of the left tackle capabilities, but Tyler Booker is a great player. Number 58 for the Green Bay Packers. You went corner in round number 1, correct? Did. Darian Porter. Here in round number 2, you know, technically you could even go after running back if you wanted to, but edge rusher, defense, interior, those are the positions. Technically linebacker, Isaiah McDuffie's up, but Jack Sawyer just feels like he's built for like the North. So we're going to be taunting the Detroit Lions by taking Jack Sawyer there. At 59 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, a wide receiver still makes a lot of sense for us. You could go after Trey Harris. You can go after Ty Felton. I love Jaden Higgins. I know necessarily he doesn't fit a new role compared to what we have in George Pickens, but he's a true boundary receiver that I don't understand why he's graded this poorly. Like, what, he might run like a 4.55. Whoop-de-fucking-do. He's a strong player who is just extremely, extremely smooth. I think that his big issue is that he just doesn't fake defenders out. Like, he just runs a really good route. And it's like, dude, do some route fakes here and there. And with that, I think he might be unstoppable. And number 60 for the Buffalo Bills, defensive back, kind of the key here, edge rusher as well. I'm actually looking at Tyler Barron and Kamen Rucker. Rucker's just slipping because he hasn't been super consistently healthy this year, but Rucker's been fantastic. I mean, he's had some real eye-popping weeks. So we're going to give him the love he deserves. And number 61, though, for the Bills. So we fixed the defensive line. You could actually go after a wide receiver here if you want to. I'm just not a fan of how Ty Felton ended off the year with a 3-drop game. Like, that's just not how I want to see him play. But it's certainly reasonable to at least consider him for this selection. You know, you do have some really good players here like Jedi Barron, though, who could end up playing safety. And I kind of want to test that theory out, so let's go after Jedi Barron here at 61. At 62 for the Philadelphia Eagles, we could go after a linebacker at this point. You have some very good ones that are still here. Jack Kaiser, one of them. I'm not selling anybody on this, am I? I'm not selling myself on it either. So other positions we could draft, you could try to get like Garrett Nussmeier, who does have that arm plus upside to be an understudy to Jalen Hurts. I don't think that's actually a bad move. Tight end wise, I don't see anybody that's worth it. I love Jake Brenningstool, but I just don't see him being viewed. I think he's going, I didn't realize he was a true senior, but I think Jake Brenningstool is the next best based on like what I've seen. Not worth the 2nd round pick currently, even though he technically is, he was 28 coming into the year. Besides that, I mean, offensive line makes a lot of sense here too. I mean, you think about it, you try to get someone who's a developmental guy for the right tackle spot who could be a really good short-term guard. That's Armand Membu. And so, I mean, it's kind of an unideal draft for the Eagles, but Armand Membu would make a lot of sense. And that would be my next selection there for the Chiefs. So I guess it disarms a competitor for the Super Bowl. But if the Chiefs end up landing one of these top running backs here, like Amari and Hampton, who just slipped because no trades, I think that could totally renovate the offense. And so I'm going to do it. I don't think you need it, but sometimes you just go best player available, Amari and Hampton, the selection there. And at 64, ending off this mock draft, we have the Detroit Lions. We've already taken an edge in the 1st round. Who are we kidding? We already knew that was going to happen. Tate Ratledge is the obvious choice here for me, but I want to see if we could try to shake things up a little bit. You know what? I actually will. We're going to go Marcus Bowe, friend of the show. I don't know if he's going to declare yet. I got to ask him about that, see what's good. But this guy is really, really, really athletic, powerful. I just think he's going to be a guard at the next level. And, you know, tackle versatility is never a bad thing to have so long as you play one of those positions really well. So that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.